Welcome back, guys, to Stumblin Forward. I'm one of your hosts, Kristen Herman, and actually today we are talking to our other co-host, Monica Ortega. Uh, so today we wanted to talk about one of Monica's really great accomplishments, which is the power of pivoting. She wrote a book in 2020 during the quarantine, because what else are you going to do when you're sitting at home except for write a book? And this is actually one of those things where we wanted to just really talk about something that, was a big feat. And how about I just give it away to Monica? A bit about your book.
Thank you.
Why'd you write it?
Well, I didn't actually plan on writing a book. I think it was always in my head that I wanted to eventually kind of talk about, how the show started and my divorce and that whole journey. But I always thought I'm still in the middle of it, so I can't write it. And then I thought, well, maybe my middle is somebody else's beginning and there is some stuff to say. And so I just sat down to start writing, and it was 3 weeks later I had a book. I just basically couldn't stop. And I was like, oh, I guess I had some stuff to say. But yeah, so the book is called The Power of Pivoting: How to Embrace Change and Create a Life You Love. And it does go through my journey, but it's more of a self-help guide for everybody. I'm kind of using myself as an example, but I really want people to learn how to embrace change and face fears and kind of shift that mindset from seeing it as something scary and awful to something with a lot of opportunity.
Awesome. So I know that you said that it kind of just all came out at once and you're like, oh, I have a book now. But what was the process between that? Because I know you have, I personally, because I'm your friend, I saw the note cards and I saw kind of the minimal process of laying out the book. So where did that all come from?
Yeah, I think that's a good step. I actually learned that from Jen Sincero from You're a Badass, and she talked about her book writing process and kind of outlining it. And actually now I'm in a lot of clubhouse rooms and people are asking how do you write a book? How do you write a book? And yeah, so I created index cards with the subject that I knew I wanted to cover. I knew I wanted to cover relationship pivoting, career pivoting, mental health. And then I just sort of rearranged them into an order that I liked. And then I broke it down into, subcategories. And once I had the bones of that, the actual writing was pretty simple because I knew where I wanted it to go. So I think that that's probably an important thing just in general. I didn't do that with my show. I wish I would have kind of outlined it a bit more and have a plan. It turns out it helps.
I feel though with the Monica Go show and most of the other things, it does help to have a plan, to know what you're going to be doing and kind of a storyline in the sense, but having that spontaneity, you didn't have it all written out in your head, exactly what you were going to say. So I think that's where the balance comes in.
Yeah. And I actually didn't think I had that much to say until I started writing. And then, by the time you go through my own story, which is pretty easy to write because I lived it, and then how do I switch this to a general thing that everybody can use? And then I put exercises at the end of each chapter to help other people sort of navigate those things. So yeah, it was definitely a process to figure out how do I make this my journey, but something that can work for everybody, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So I know also you blog a lot, so you have a lot of different writing backgrounds. Where did you start writing?
I always enjoyed writing in school and stuff, but it's funny because when I started the blog, I actually wasn't a fan of writing it just because I wasn't a fan of saying at 2.3 miles, take a right on the trail. It was just kind of boring to me, but I always loved talking about relationships. And I always loved talking about, inspirational stuff and motivational stuff, even just in general with you and with other friends. And one of the things that, not to throw it back, but Jensen Chero says is what do you find yourself always talking about naturally? And what do you enjoy talking about a lot? And for me, it was that sort of relationships, change, navigating all the different seasons in life. So I think it came out a bit more naturally than my blog ever did because I still am pretty bad at keeping a regular blog, but the book was easier for me to write just because it was something I was
Or
really
feeling.
passionate about. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever want to go into psychology, or did
Yeah,
you
I
always
did
go into
actually.
acting? Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought if I didn't do entertainment, I would be a high school counselor. And then I actually studied sociology for a while. I thought about being a social worker. And the big thing was, can you like go home at the end of the day and not take it with you? And I was like, no, I'm so sensitive. I would not be able to live with like the cases and, all of that stuff. So at the end of the day, it probably isn't the best fit for me, but I enjoy helping people in that sense. So.
Yeah. So I know that most of the listeners know kind of generally where we came from and who we are, if you listen in. But how about you just bring it back to, like, I know you've explained it in your book, The Power of Pivoting. You have like your chapters of your life and then how it pivots, like how you were pivoting in life.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell our listeners like where you came from?
Yeah, so I'm from Holt, Michigan. I always knew I wanted to do entertainment stuff, so I kind of bounced around. I lived in Nashville to sing country music, and then I moved to LA to do acting. And so I was always kind of bouncing in these different careers until I realized hosting is 100% what I want to do. And I had a teacher tell me to create my dream show as a way to get auditions. And so I started hiking and filming it on my iPhone. And that was Monica Goes. And that's kind of how that was born. And then when I met Kristen, about 2 years into the show, at that point, I was just kind of asking anybody to hold my camera. Um, and then I, had a trip to Costa Rica. My friend backed out. And so I put on Facebook, I was like, hey, anyone want to go on this trip? And Kristen's like, yep, got a passport. I'm coming. And I'd met her
I'm
maybe
into
twice
travel.
before that. And then, of course, like we're on the trip and she's like hanging off the zip line to get the shot. And I was like, dude, this girl is amazing. So, yeah, it was sort of the combination of like,
Adventure.
of us becoming friends, but then also realizing we had a good chemistry with the show. And then behind the scenes, what was going on, a lot of the show came from the fact that I was in a pretty emotionally abusive marriage and my ex-husband didn't like to travel or go on adventures. And so, on the one hand, it was, yes, I want to be a host. But on the other hand, it was, okay, if I'm not going to get this out of my marriage, how can I get this out of a career? And so that was part of the travel aspect too. So that was all going on behind the scenes. And then when I found out he'd been cheating, I was actually incredibly relieved because I thought, oh, thank God I can leave and I can meet somebody that likes these things and like go all in on the show. And so it was a very interesting reaction to a divorce. But yeah, and then I kind of came out and started telling people what had been going on behind the scenes. And I had a lot of people tell me not to do that, but I'm glad I did because I ended up with, women reaching out to me with their own stories, and it just sort of refueled that passion I have for helping other people navigate change and navigate those different things. And so, yeah, that's a big part of the book. Um, there's a lot of mental health, obviously, because I changed careers so many times. That's a big part of it because I think, especially in 2020, a lot of people had to pivot. And if they weren't used to that before, if they hadn't switched careers and they'd had the same thing for so long, it can be really scary. And I thought, I may not be an expert at any of these things, but I am sort of an expert in changing a lot of stuff. And so I thought maybe I have something to bring to the table and help people get through those really scary seasons in life.
Yeah. So with I feel like pivoting, the word and just like the surrounding belief behind pivoting is kind of a new thing. I feel like I've heard it more in the last year, obviously, because there was a pandemic and everyone had to, in their own sense, pivot in their life in some way or another. Some people didn't, maybe they kind of like just had to do their own thing. But where do you think, like, why did that stick with you? Why pivoting?
Yeah, because I think everyone sees the word change as scary. And I think, a lot of that, not to get all psychology like, but it comes from our childhood, right? Like we're taught change is scary and this is how your life's going to go and these linear things that you're going to check the boxes to. And for me, when my life blew up and I had to change and I had to pivot, I saw a lot of opportunity and I was really excited about it. And so I think everybody sees change as scary, but pivot is like this softer way of, oh, we're just going to change direction. And that's not as bad as like my world falling apart kind of thing. And so this word pivot came out in 2020. And it's funny because I wrote the book and I was waiting for a traditional publisher, and everybody kept saying the word pivot, pivot, pivot. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to get this book out there before everybody is sick of this word. So I ended up self-publishing because I finished the book in August, but then it wasn't until February that I decided, okay, I'm going to do this on my own because I think this is a timely thing and it's necessary for people. But yeah, I mean, I like the word. I'm not sick of it yet, but I like the word because it feels a little softer than change. Change feels very dramatic. Pivot feels like we're just going a different way.
Yeah. I know that you talked about how you self-published just because you wanted to get it out there, and it was something that, you know, it was like, I think we've talked about this also in previous episodes with our writers. What do you think, what pushed you just to self-publish instead? Like, you had a process of talking to any of the agents or anything like that, or researching what you could do?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple people get back to me of the traditional publishers and literary agents, and I kept hearing the same thing, that I wasn't a celebrity. So nobody wants to buy a nonfiction book from somebody that is not a celebrity. And then I had one person that was very interested, but he was like, it doesn't make sense. You have a travel show, you have a podcast about entrepreneurship, and now you got a book about your divorce. Like, these things don't line up. But in my head, they do, because they're all pushing out of your comfort zone. They're all facing your fears. They're all leaning into the scary stuff. So I realized nobody was really getting it. And then I actually talked to a friend who was she's kind of in the same process. And she said, well, what's your goal? Do you want to be an author? Or like, what's the goal with the book? And I said, no, I don't plan on writing more books. For me, I want to speak. I want to speak to audiences. I want to help people, you know, maybe in coaching, I don't know, but like, speaking is where my heart is. And she said, well, if you just want to be a speaker, then a book is just a platform. It's just something to add to your expertise. And so that really pushed me over the edge to go ahead and do it on my own, which was a whole nother process in itself. But yeah, I'm glad I did in the end. And, you know, the traditional publisher has its perks too, but I think this was the way to go for me.
Yeah. What was the first step of self-publishing? Like, first thing that you had to do, that you recall?
Oh my gosh, in the middle of all of the panic attacks and breakdowns.
First thing, have a panic attack. I'm just kidding.
The first thing for me was to find an editor, because I knew I'd kind of wrote it all so fast and I hadn't gone back and looked at it, because I wrote it and then I was going into looking for an agent. And so I didn't really touch the book for so many months. And so the first thing was to hire an editor to go through and like make sure it sounded good and then take apart the little things. So that was definitely the first thing. But then it was also a lot of like Googling, what platforms do I use to get the book out? And I got really lucky that I met some really great coaches. Friend of mine, Jen Ruiz, she's self-published a few books. So I took a couple of her webinars. I met a guy named Gary on Clubhouse who was literally like, let's jump on a Zoom and I'll walk you through the process. So I just had really good people around me, and it was a lot of note taking and trying to like take things one step at a time, because it really was, to me, it felt like learning another language. You know, it's something I never planned on doing. So everything was foreign when it came to editing and publishing.
Yeah. Did you feel like with an editor, did they try to change your voice at all? Do you feel like it was really hard to communicate with your editor?
Yeah, I actually got some really good advice just Googling again, and that was to have like 3 or 4 editors just edit a chapter or 1,000 words or just a piece of it to see what they did with it. And I was happy I did that, because I was surprised, because I think I did 4 people and 3 of the 4 came back completely changing my voice, making it sound like an educational textbook. And I was like, no, these grammatical things are my voice. Like, that's just, you know, yeah, there's some couple swear words in there and like, it's casual. Like, that's who I am. And then I had one editor that kept the voice and actually enhanced it. Like, there was a couple things she like changed to make it sound like me. And I was like, oh yes. So
Nice.
yeah, I went with her, and that was a good process at the beginning.
Kind of breaking down, like almost doing pre-interviews in a sense with your editor, so you're getting someone who understands what you want and how you want to be portrayed. That's interesting. Yeah, Cool. So what about what's like a favorite chapter? So I know that like there's a few and most of them surround yourself, but and they're kind of like guided by your story.
Mhm.
But I know they end with exercises as well. What's your
Mhm.
favorite chapter that ends with like your favorite exercise?
Um, I'm kind of torn because this sounds weird, but I obviously love the chapter that goes through my divorce because I think there's a lot of good stuff about relationship changes and just like what to do when you have that giant unexpected change, right? Whether it be the loss of a loved one or a divorce, like we're all going to have, two or three big moments in our life, maybe more, hopefully not, where the bottom just drops out. And so I like going through that process and kind of explaining that. But then um, for me, I really like the mental health chapter because one thing I did that I kind of realized not a lot of people do this, but I created like a mental health toolkit, which is I have, these things that I write out that can help me stop a spiral before it starts. And I'm just very much like a to-do person, to-do list and proactive, and I need steps to feel like I'm in control. And so over the years, like these were kind of things I built out for me. And then writing it out so that it can help other people and giving them those steps, to me that's huge because that's my goal, is to really make a difference in that world and help people understand that it's okay to not be okay, and let's figure out what to do about it.
Yeah. Awesome. I was gonna just say something and I totally like forgot. It was something about the um oh, gosh, it was something about the exercises with the power of pivoting, and I don't know, I lost it. I'm gonna go somewhere else. It's gone. It's gone. Something about relationship. Was it your divorce? I lost it. All right. Anyway,
I have
um,
the toolkit in there.
oh, it was something about, yes, I remember now. Thank you very much. It was about the toolkit. Okay, starting out. With people who are not generally into reading self-help books, or people who are not type A, or someone who will make lists or have like a toolkit in the sense, or is kind of like fly by the seat of their pants type of person, but maybe needs some exercises for themselves. How would you tell them that this book will help them, if even if they're not like completely organized or they're not into lists?
Yeah, I think well, I always tell everybody, find what works for you and do it. And if it doesn't work for you, throw it out. Like don't do things just because they're in a self-help book or because somebody tells you, this is your morning routine and these are the ways to get successful. Figure out what works for you and double down. So if some of those lists don't work for you, cool. I'm not offended. Toss it out. Um, but I think there's like the combination of the very woo-woo side, right? Of I'm just going to put it out there and then things will be great. And then there's the type A people that have lists. And so I feel like this book kind of falls in the middle because that's who I am. And I didn't get on with the whole like the secret, like, oh, I'm just going to put this house on a vision board and then I have the house a year later. Like to me, it was just very woo woo. And so I liked having those things to visualize, but then creating a plan and working it backwards to actually making it happen. So that was my way of feeling like, okay, I can see these things happening. And this is a combination of the two processes. Um, but yeah, I mean, I am the type of person that like I like to give myself deadlines and lists, but that's where I keep the toolkit as well, because sometimes a list is great. And sometimes I just need to go dance it out, or I just need to like cry or be angry that day or go for a run or whatever it is. So I like having the options so that if I'm feeling a certain way one day and something doesn't work, well, then I can try a couple other things.
Yeah. So when do you feel like you changed in that sense? Do you feel like you've always been like that, or when was like that big transition?
I mean, it first started in college. So I got really, really depressed my freshman year in college. And they actually wanted to put me on antidepressants. And I'm not against those for people that literally that's their day to day, they need that sort of thing. But I knew that this was new for me and not something that I wanted to do medication for. Um, so I came up with a plan and I started keeping a calendar of like good days, bad days, unbearable days, and just kept doing it until there were no unbearable days. And I would make myself go for walks. And so I would start writing out these things that I had to do and then certain things worked. Okay, I keep that in my mind for the next time I feel that way. Um, and then with the anxiety, which actually came on after my divorce, which was a new fun surprise, it was like starting all over, and I had to figure out things that worked for me. And like one big thing I talk about actually with you is stopping that brain spiral. And so I found my biggest thing was we lie to ourselves and we have these stories in our heads that can turn into a panic attack, right? If you're convinced that this is true, it can send you in a spiral. And so I found like calling you because you're like my practical friend. And I'd be like, hey, this is what my brain is telling me. And you could shut it down in 5 seconds and be like, well, that's not true because this, and this, and you have evidence that that's not true. Oh, okay. And I mean, it doesn't always work, but it helped to kind of curb that spiral as opposed to sitting in my own head and convincing myself these things were real. So it's been a process over the years of figuring out, again, what works for me and what doesn't. And, there are times when I'm spiraling and I don't call anybody because I know I need to just go for a run or, you know, angry dance or something. There's other times where it's better to like be on my own.
I think you should record the next angry dance. I'm angry music. So, I think that would go viral. So
I'll record the steps of the mental health toolkit. People be like, this girl is nuts.
Oh my gosh, that would be interesting. That'd be so, and then it has like little blips, so like step 1, like step 2.
Full breakdown.
Oh my gosh. I think that'd be a good movie. Anyway, so going back to the writing of the book, do you feel like the biggest mistake, what was the biggest mistake you made when either writing or publishing?
Well, with typesetting, I mean, it's tough because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I'm just trusting other people that I hire. And I first of all, I didn't even know what typesetting was. So for anybody listening that doesn't know, that's basically somebody that organizes it in a way that it looks good on a book, that when you upload it to Amazon, it actually prints out like a book, all of those things. And I hired the same person who was my editor to be the typesetter, which she told me she had done and didn't. And so it was about 2 weeks of going back and forth and her literally trying to figure it out and me crying because we're getting behind on deadlines and I didn't know what to do. And I'm like trying to believe the best in her. And I actually learned a very tough lesson that I think every entrepreneur should learn, which is it's okay to fire people. And it was getting to the point where my book was not going to come out on time. And so I did end up telling her we were done. And I hired somebody else and he actually had to go back and re-edit the whole thing because she had made so many mistakes. She'd kind of ruined all of the editing that we'd done. So it was a very long few days of breaking down and just really feeling hopeless. And then this guy came in and like saved my life and got everything done very quickly. So, I think just trusting the freelancers without doing my research is one. And I just figured people were honest, but that's not always the case. And I should have called it a lot earlier when I realized instead of just trying to like tough it out and give her the benefit of the doubt. But it's okay. It all got done and it all worked out. And it was a good lesson of it's okay to fire people too.
That's gotta be hard though, because like you want to, I mean, again, like you have to think of it, it's like, it's a business, so this is your book and you paid, you're paying for this. And it's a hard process, especially when you don't have to do a lot of firing.
And I loved her so much in the editing. I think that was the hard thing too, is that
like she's talented editor. She's a really talented editor.
But it ended up turning out to be a big battle of like trying to get refunded and not getting refunded. And like, it just, it became a process, but it's all good. And then now I'm just waiting for the print books, which is another headache. That's okay. It's all going to work out.
What's the print books? You're just waiting for like the one behind you?
Yeah, like the one behind me. So I changed the cover lamination from glossy to matte. And then I got charged like twice for that, which was another mistake with Ingram Spark. And then it took them like 2 weeks to ship them. So I just got them to see that I needed to switch it. So now like, I don't know if they're going to be here in time for the book launch. So it's a whole thing. So I'm actually, you guys are going to be the first ones to know this. Well, by the time this comes out, it'll be done anyway. I'm actually going to end up releasing it probably about a week early so that I can order copies of the book. because I can't order copies until it's published.
Oh, really?
On
That's
Amazon.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm probably going to release it about a week early and then just let all my friends and family know that like, hey, it's going to be at a special price for like a week. And then we'll officially launch it April 1st. So
Awesome. Question. Can you hear that sound?
no.
Okay, good. There's someone is messaging me on this computer, and anyway, I'll cut that part. Anyway, they keep doing it. It's driving me nuts. Anyway, just so you can't hear it. Okay, so with the power of pivoting, where do you see it in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I really want it to be like the biggest thing is I want it to be a movement that's bigger than me. I want it to go past my friends and family. I love that they're supportive, but I really want the book to help people that are in that first part of a change that don't know what to do with it. And, you know, I want to help people ask those big questions before maybe a big change happens, because I feel like, again, when my divorce happened, it was the first time I asked myself, what do I actually want my life to look like? And how do I make that happen? And I think the earlier in life that people can ask themselves that question, the better off they'll be. So that's what I want for the book. I hopefully want to be speaking at events and inspiring people. And hopefully, you know, with the mental health thing, I would love for the mental health toolkit to take off so that people actually utilize it and it can help maybe prevent a few spirals for people.
Is that the next step, just taking the toolkit itself from the book and making it into something they can download as a PDF?
I don't really want it to be like a separate charge thing. I think I'm just going to give those away. Like I've been putting together PDFs of the exercises. And that's something I just kind of want to give people. It is something I've been pitching to like media outlets to speak about, is how to build a mental health toolkit for yourself. So I would like that to be like something that I cover when I talk to people. Because again, it's like if it can help one person in the audience that does it and prevents themselves from going down a really bad road, then I'm happy.
Awesome. Would you want these talks, like I know that you want to talk in front of big crowds and do more of like public speaking type of thing. Would you want it just to be called the power of pivoting, or would you call it something else?
I might change it depending on who I talk to, because I'm also pitching to high schools, because like one big chapter in there, actually the first time I felt depression and all of that was that transition from high school to college. And I am still passionate about that age group. Like I said, I wanted to be a high school counselor. So I would love to speak to like juniors and seniors in high schools and colleges about that transition and what like may come along in the mental health world, like just ways to kind of navigate that change in a positive way. So that, I don't know, that might be called something different. I haven't really thought about that, but yeah, I think there's so many parts to the book, because like I want to talk to high schools about that. I would love to talk to women about the divorce stuff. I'd love to talk to career people about all the changes in careers. So I haven't really thought about where I want it to go entirely. I just know that probably each chapter will be broken up into different talks.
Interesting. Cool. Awesome. So where can everyone find The Power of Pivoting? We know that it's being released April 1st on Amazon. So where can everyone find everything else?
Yeah, so it'll be on Amazon, and then it's also going to be at powerofpivoting.com, which it'll probably redirect you to monicagoes.com/book. So you can also go on Monica Goes. And then I'm going to hopefully set up an order page so you can order it right off there. But Amazon's going to be the best way, the easiest way that people can find it.
Perfect. All right. And I know there's a Power Pivoting on Instagram now, if anybody wants to give it a follow. I don't know if you have one on Facebook yet for a Facebook page.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook. What day is this airing? This is Friday the 2nd.
This is going to be on the 2nd.
So anybody who's listening, the day it comes out, the book launch party is Saturday, April 3rd.
The 3rd. If you're invited, can they come?
It's anybody. So
awesome.
Yeah, go to the.
It's gonna be virtual, so you know.
Yep, it'll be virtual on the Facebook page, Power of Pivoting. So, and if
Perfect.
you missed it, sorry.
Can't they just like, you should just record it and there's like.
No, I'm gonna record it. It'll still be on the page.
Sorry guys, you missed the cool party.
If you wanted to,
but.
live today.
Well, I'm really glad that we got to talk about, your book. And I think that, again, it's just such a big accomplishment to write a book. Honestly, it's something that people will talk about for years that they want to do and they'll never do. And you did it like really fast. So that's awesome.
I don't know that I recommend that the best way, but yeah, that's one way to get it done.
Again, like I said, I think that you just have so much experience writing the blogs. And again, it's about your feeling and in your own story. So
Yeah.
I think that's why it came out like,
For sure.
already organized. But the Power of Pivoting will be out April 1st. If anybody is interested in listening to this beautiful episode, it's will be out April 2nd, which will be season 4. And we are on.
Can we just give a woo woo to the fact that season 4, this is our first
season
episode.
4. Woo, woo. This is the first. Yeah, it's happening, guys. It's happening. It's going to be episode 30, 30, 40, 31. Anyway. Like something like that. And this will be on Apple Podcasts. Please go and leave a review. Please leave 5 stars. That's how we can get more people to listen and to bring other people on. We're also on Spotify and Google Podcasts if you're interested in that. This video will be up on YouTube. And thanks again, Monica, for talking about your beautiful book. I love it. It's right behind her. If you're watching the video, you can see it right there. And my name is Kristen Herman. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Monica Ortega. Thanks, Kristen.